The Bobby O Show.
Welcome to the Bobby O Show. My name is Bob O. Potzner. I'm an attorney from Danbury, Connecticut in the law firm of Collins and Hannafin. I'm a litigator, and it's pertinent for this show. I do a lot of family law, which is the main theme of today's show, which is going to be about communication. But I could not do a show on June 6, 2024, without having a little bit of history commemoration of the fact that 80 years ago today was the invasion of Normandy, which is a very critical battle in American history. It cost many, many American lives, but it was deemed from all perspectives one of the most important battles that saved our country and the world for democracy. And I think it's very important, especially in this day and age, when we are having so many issues of divisiveness in our country, that we remember that many, many American soldiers, male and female, died in protecting our democracy in a very, very critical battle that was significant in saving the world for democracy. And I have a couple of quotes that I want to read to you. And by the way, the book that to me is the seminal book on this topic is a book by Stephen Ambrose, who's a very famous historian. He wrote many, many books, and I bought this book from him many, many years ago, called D-Day, June 6, 1944, the Climatic Battle of World War II. It's a very heavy, I was a poli-sci major in college, and it's very intense, but it gives you a great history of the war, of that particular battle in the war. And it's really critical that we remember how we got to today in terms of our freedom. My father was in the Navy, World War II, and he was always very proud of his battles on ships in Okinawa. And he used to always say the gravy's in the Navy. And I think we have to understand that our forefathers and mothers are very critical to the American freedom that we have today. And I have a couple of quotes that are in the opening of the Stephen Ambrose book. One from Winston Churchill, which was his quote, "The most difficult and complicated operation ever to take place." Dwight Eisenhower said, "Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking." And even Joseph Stalin said, "The history of war does not know of an undertaking comparable to it for the breadth of conception, grandeur of scale, and mastery of execution." I think we all should take a moment to take silent prayer for ourselves and for our country. And I'm sure we all had family, relatives, friends of an older generation. I watched on TV today, they had men who were in the late 90s, early hundreds, who were still commemorating that battle. So let's just take a 5-second moment right now to think about God bless America and the people who died for us in Normandy. Okay, now to our show, which I'm very excited about. We're going to talk today about communications. Communications is a very, very important part of the legal practice, especially in the field of family law. And all three lawyers who are on the show today, myself as the host, so I'll be doing, believe it or not, the least amount of speaking on the topic. And I think my two guests will laugh at that because they know me as being a little bit, shall we say, loquacious. But in any event, I have today Vicki Volper and Elle Barr. So why don't we introduce the ladies and let them introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the topic of communications. Go ahead, Vicki, why don't you start?
Yeah, good morning, Bob. Thanks for this opportunity to chat with you and Elle. I am an attorney who practices exclusively non-adversarial divorce law. I do not litigate at all. I do only mediation and collaborative divorce because I believe that most families will be better served by working out their problems outside of court.
Okay, thank you, Vicki. And Vicki and I belong to a collaborative divorce team out of Darien. And in fact, we had some discussions earlier this week. And it's all about educating ourselves as lawyers to be better practitioners. Elle?
Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you. I'm thrilled to be here with you and with Vicki. I am a family law attorney. I am based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I serve as a court-appointed guardian ad litem, which is a best interest attorney. And in addition to that, I also work as the education coordinator for Our Family Wizard, which is an app and a website that helps co-parents communicate and manage all the responsibilities and all the complexities that come with raising children in two separate homes.
And Vic and Elle, we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. I actually, as a practitioner, have referred clients over the years to Our Family Wizard. And it's a mechanism that's been utilized by the courts and by lawyers to help families communicate better if they cannot. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the program, because it's a very useful, and there are other tools as well and that help us to communicate. Communication is important. If you don't have good communication in anything that we do, whether you're a teacher, whether you're an accountant, whatever you do professionally, communication is very, very, very important. I just happened to read a book by Jen Psaki. You can see from these books behind me, I've read about 85%. They're all hard copy except for a couple. But it's interesting. I didn't tie the show into what her book was about. She talks about communications, and she has a quote that's she cites in a book from another person, and it says, quote, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Now, in some respects, I agree with her comment. In others, I don't, because we say as lawyers in our divorce cases that if you say something, it's really hard to pull it back. But any comments, ladies? First, I'll go with Elle about that particular thought on communication.
I love that quote. And I think, words are powerful. Words can have a huge impact. I see each and every day as a court-appointed GAL how the actions parents take, the words that they say, the way that they communicate, how it directly impacts their children. So I agree with that quote. I think both actions and words are powerful. It depends on the situation. Sometimes it's the words that are more powerful or impactful. Sometimes it's the actions.
Vicki, any comment?
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. When I talk with couples in deciding what way to get divorced, I very often ask them to think about what will their children remember 5 years from now about this experience? What will they hear being said by each of you to each other? What kind of emotions are displayed by your communication that will make them remember this in a positive or a negative way? And I also ask them, how important is it to you, because you'll be connected to each other the rest of your lives through your children, that when you go to their soccer games and their graduations and later on their weddings, whatever the events are, that the children don't cringe when mom and dad are in the room together because they know how to speak to each other and not use hurtful words.
When we're involved in divorce matters, if there are children, especially children, we're supposed to, even though I may represent the husband or wife in the case, and Vicki may have the other side, and Elle may have, just the GL part of it. It's important to understand that we have to learn to communicate. Okay, you want to fight about dollars and cents, but we have to really fight about who picks up the young lady from Girl Scouts and have a big, confrontation. Part of the problem we have nowadays is technology, which can be good and it can be bad. And one of the problems in technology is that you cannot show intonation. You cannot, you might say something intended to be the nicest thing in the world, but it may come across poorly. I spent 15 years on boards of education. And one time we hired a principal. We hired her from Ohio, a great lady, Dr. Lindsay, Diana Lindsay. And I'll never forget when she had her first session with the student body in the auditorium, she said the following. She said, it's important how you communicate. She said, I can say to you, I will catch you, with your finger pointing, or you can say, I will catch you. And when you talk in the process, sometimes parents in the divorce process, which is for many people the worst time of their lives, they can't control their emotions. But I've never forgotten that comment from Dr. Lindsay's from from 2003 or 4, and I'll never forget. I will catch you. I will catch you. How do you help Elle when you're acting as guardian ad litem, which is a job in Connecticut, I'm sure it's similar in the states that you practice in, to really act for the best interests of the children, because the parents right now are not thinking about that. How do you try to communicate to parents about the not this, but the this?
And that is really, really difficult. It's probably the most challenging part of my role as guardian ad litem, is sharing with the parents how their actions, how their words impact their children, and that their children are going to remember this, and that what they do and what they say is really, really important. So when I start my investigative work, I conduct a very thorough and comprehensive investigation where I interview everyone and anyone connected to the child, whether it's the teacher, the mental health pro, medical provider, extended family, neighbors, and then most importantly, the parents and the children. So during my initial one-on-one meeting with each parent, I bring a folder and I bring them all the resources under the sun you can imagine. I mean, it's a big, lengthy folder filled with the Child Bill of Rights. There's articles on the ACEs research study, the PCE study, other articles explaining how conflict harms children, not just immediately, but long-term. And then I also share information about communication platforms, and specifically our Family Wizard, and how it is a tool to help families streamline co-parenting and improve the co-parenting relationship.
Vicki, we could spend a long show today, or multiple shows, talking about the different types of divorce methodologies. In Connecticut, you start with filing a divorce action at some point in time, and you end with having a divorce action. There's different steps along the way, but you got to be essentially in court theoretically twice. And there's essentially three models that we talk about. One is the traditional model, which is two sides. Each side has a lawyer, they can self-represented. Another is having mediation, which is one person, usually an attorney, but it can be other than an attorney, with the two clients, or I shouldn't say clients, but the two parties discussing, try to reach a resolution. And there's something called the collaborative model, which is something that Vicki and I are trained in as well. And that's where each side has a lawyer. And then you have other people who are expert, what we call them coaches, to come in and discuss different aspects. Again, keep it as a more amicable arrangement. Vicki, I'd like you to talk a little bit about, regardless of the model, I know you do collaborative and mediation, but regardless of the model, how do you essentially begin your process with your particular client to try to help them at the outset be better at communications between themselves, the husband and wife, and vice versa? How do you set it up? How do you open up the entree?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's really critical. And it's something that I have to encourage clients to participate in, because they don't always see the value at the beginning. What I do is I always have a deep dive into what the goals are of the parties. What are they really trying to accomplish? Not I keep the house, you keep the car, I keep the boat, whatever that is, the material things. It's really about what are your real goals. Are you trying to further your career in a general way? Are you trying to make sure that your children live near their grandparents? What kind of 30,000 foot goals do you have for the process? And the reason I do that is because people should negotiate based on their true interests, not on their positions. And I believe that that also helps with the communication, because once you get in touch with what you're trying to accomplish, you will tailor your language to meet those interests that you've expressed.
One of my favorite songs of all time is Aretha Franklin, R-E-S-P-E-C-T, Respect. Mm-hmm. And I, at my opening meeting, and usually with my opening meetings, sometimes you get people referring to you because they want me to say, I hear you do collaborative law type thing. Other times people come in and saying, I need an understanding what the law is. And in those meetings, we talk about the different choices that may exist. But I always try to, in my initial discussion, talk about the fact that no matter what process you use, you cannot take words back. And that one thing I say is, don't make a promise that I'm going to do A, B, or C in the divorce process, because you can't take that back no matter how hard you try. And number two, you may say things that are very hurtful to the other party. And those are things that are very difficult to screen back into the process to make good communications. It's one thing to, people shouldn't fight, and by fight we mean verbally fight. Obviously they shouldn't physically fight, but But sometimes emotions get raised. Elle is going to introduce to us. We have an email. Was it an email or a text? I forget which it was, but one of those. And Elle is we're going to go through this, and this is going to be example. We won't tell you whether it's example of good communications or bad communications, but it'll be obvious right away. So, Candy Ann, would you please, as director, put up the screen, and we'll let. I hope I can see it pretty well. I'll put my glasses on anyway. Elle, I want to talk about, and this is an anonymous case. We don't know who the people are, but tell us how this came about.
So this is an actual message from a user who's been on our Family Wizard for years and years. So this was a message that was sent, and it's one of her very first messages. So again, when parents are going through a divorce or separation, they are emotionally overwhelmed, they are unprepared, and they are uncertain, and especially about how to communicate and how to move forward. So when you look through this message, you could see that it is riddled with insults. Clearly, she doesn't like dad's new girlfriend. She's calling dad names. She's saying he's acting too young for his age. But she also has some real needs that are hidden throughout this message. So she needs to be reimbursed for an expense, but she doesn't list what expense it is, how much, when she made the purchase. There's no proof of purchase. She also wants to know if dad's going to be picking up, dropping off, attending events, going to a dentist appointment. These are all really, really important things when you're raising children. And then finally, she wants to trade days with father. So we don't know if maybe they have a right to first refusal clause in their marital settlement agreement, or they have some other private arrangement. The details are hazy, and you can just imagine how much of the logistics and how many of these requests actually got accomplished through this message. And I will tell you, probably zero, nothing.
Elle, when I was in college and law school, before I took summer jobs in law firms, I worked for the Bridgeport Post, which is Bridgeport is a large city in Connecticut, and they had the Post Telegram was a big newspaper, and I worked for summers there, and I learned how important it was as a 17 and 16-year-old person that the lead is very important, and that the headlines, which are often drafted by people other than who wrote the story, is critical to grab your attention. But when you start out a paragraph saying, "Good morning, idiot," a miscommunication with these people, maybe idiot was a kind word. Maybe for them it was kind, but you start out with an idiot, you've already lost your audience. You've already lost your audience. And there are other ways to say that. I actually, with my clients, I discourage tremendously texting. I tell my clients, first of all, in my retainer letter, and for those who don't know, lawyers typically have a retainer letter that explains the fees and the costs, et cetera. Mine says, black letters, bold, all caps, I do not accept text messages. Now, why do I do that? Well, a couple of things. One is people can be sitting down, having a cocktail, maybe their fourth cocktail, whatever it is, not Diet Dr. Pepper like I drink, but the fourth cocktail, and they might write something nasty. And so you can't take it back. And also, I believe that when we write a letter, we think about it a second time before we send it. An email, you might review it. A text, you don't. So I have those rules about texting. And so when you write a communication like that, idiot, that's horrible. Any other comments you have, Vicki? If we put that back on the screen again, if you could, Candy Ann. Any other comments you have about that communication? Why it's a lousy communication?
Well, as you pointed out, it doesn't accomplish what the person was trying to accomplish. I think that she just, made herself feel better by ranting, but she has specific needs to get paid, to change dates, etc., and she's not accomplishing it. And the poor child may not get picked up on time. I mean, it's just not fair to vent like that and not accomplish the goal of making sure the child is taken care of.
As I sit here, I remember, this is a true story. I was 8 years old playing in Little League Baseball. Actually farm team in those days. And my father, for a good reason, just got absorbed in work and forgot about me. And I lived in Shelton, Connecticut, and the ball field's in Huntington, which was hundreds of miles from my house, 3 miles away. But in those days, and I was petrified. And I'm walking around. It's dark. I found a gas station. Some nice guy let me use his phone. But I just thought of that just now as I look at you two folks. And I remember that story. And many years later, Okay, I'm over 21 for sure. Many years later, I still remember that incident, and I've always, not directly that story, but people don't understand how critical it is. And you know what? If you have to leave your meeting for 5 minutes early, so be it. So be it. Elle, there are some different technology programs that exist. And I know you're not here to market your program at all, because Vicki, I've used Our Family Wizard for years and years and years. I find that sometimes, even though I started the show off saying, well, gee, technology is not so great because with the this and the this for I will catch you. But sometimes if the discussions between the parties are horrible, and I've had those, I do more traditional divorce versus collaborative, and Vicki doesn't do any traditional model. So you may not see, Vicki, I'm sure you do see collaborative difficult times, but it gets really nasty sometimes. And you really have to find a way to make it calmer, scheduling, et cetera. So please tell me, I know the answer to this question, but just tell the audience, what is Our Family Wizard? How does that work? And how does it help facilitate keeping the tensions down a little bit?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that. Super high level, Our Family Wizard, it's an app and it's a website. It's a resource for co-parents and for family law practitioners. It allows parents to schedule parenting time, events, appointments, holidays, birthdays, document exchanges, share information, files, photos, manage, track, and transfer funds for shared expenses, everything outside of child support. Parents can send secure messages that cannot be manipulated. Once a message is sent, it cannot be edited, deleted, or retracted. Additionally, we have artificial intelligence that assists the parents in drafting their messages. And then finally, all of the messages are preserved. Everything is documented. It is the most extensive, interactive, and secure co-parenting platform out there. It's a mission-based company. It was started to help children and families. It continues. It's one of the reasons I'm with the company. And I see firsthand every single day with the families that I'm working with, how it is not only improving outcomes for the children and the family, but actually transforming outcomes.
Elle, when I tell my clients about Our Family Wizard and how it works and how it can help and be helpful, I actually, because I'm a bit of a control freak maybe, I give them a little bit of a discussion as to what to do and not to do. And it's try to do it in a nice way, but it's a discussion about what we talked about a few moments ago, why you can't take things back. And I try to use Our Family Wizard mostly for the scheduling and for the communications about the children. I try not to do it about the money issues, because I hate to see people fighting about, well, you just bought sneakers. And these are true stories. You won't believe this. Of course, lawyers know it. But, I get complaints from people saying, wait a minute, the husband just bought $350 Nike sneakers. He could have bought, $85 high Converse sneakers. You could have bought different kinds of sneakers. And people often will use those little things to argue. I try to focus on making sure the kids are picked up on time, that they have communications. And I really, when I get a complaint from the other attorney, and I don't read, some lawyers, I guess, are different. I will not read the communications that are sent on either Our Family Wizard or the other platforms that may exist, or communications, because I don't think it's my job to literally have a communication from a parent have a lawyer sway. And we all know when a lawyer writes something, right? You can tell that the fourth word. A lawyer wouldn't say idiot, for example. There might be an adjective before the word idiot, but it wouldn't. You wouldn't do that. So I think it's important to tell our people those different concepts. Vicki, how do you have your people work on your collaborative cases, making sure that Bobby O doesn't get left in the ball field at night 3 miles from home? How do you help people do that kind of thing to be smart?
Yeah, well, one thing I do is I try to encourage people to have a Sunday evening call together, or a Sunday afternoon call, a particular time that's convenient for both of them, to talk through what the week looks like. So if somebody has, unusual work stress and they cannot do their usual pickup, we have advance notice of it and we can adjust. Planning, and that helps the parents, but it also helps the children, because there should be predictability. Children should not be guessing which parent is picking them up. They should know in advance and know who to expect. And then if there's a change, they get as much notice in advance as possible. So I really encourage people to, even if they're using a Google Calendar or an Our Family Wizard to communicate, to have a conversation and discuss the challenges of the week and try to modify the plan and give the child advance notice of what the week is going to look like.
And by the way, if my parents were getting divorced, which they did not, and that happened, the incident happened, you can rest assured that the other parent would have made a big deal about that particular thing. See how he doesn't care and blow things up out of proportion. That's another thing I think that good lawyers can help out. A guardian ad litem, by the way, in Connecticut, I'm not sure about in the states that you practice, Elle, can testify and do testify in custody battles. And by the way, I will tell you that even though I've traditionally been, until I got persuaded for good reasons that collaborative is a better way to go, I'd say about 90% of my cases or more settled. And I always viewed people who know me as a lawyer know I can be a tough hombre and I also can be understanding. I think you need those skills, but you're better off settling cases. And if people are not communicating well and wisely, that would be a problem. But the GAL, as I started to say, can testify in Connecticut, and the judge might say, some judges say, well, I don't need the GAL, the guardian ad litem, but some case states, and in Connecticut, the GAL can testify. And the GAL saw in your position, Elle, obnoxious emails like this that you put on the screen or text like that. How would that make you, how would that impact you in your decision making if the parent is being that, shall we say, obnoxious?
It would impact my recommendations when I submit my GAL report to the court. So I'm conducting this investigation and I'm making a best interest recommendation. And if I have a parent who is insulting their co-parent, not communicating effectively, not sharing information about purchases or pickups or appointment dates or parenting modifications, it is going to impact my recommendations. And I'm routinely called as a witness and I testify. And so again, just going back to Our Family Wizard, it's this invaluable tool that keeps families organized. It holds them accountable. It reduces conflict. And in turn, it helps parents focus on what's really important, raising happy, healthy, confident, and resilient children. It's putting the children front and center.
We have less than a minute left, and I have a show planned in the near future. I'm going to have you guys back again, but I'm going to be doing a show in the future about selecting a lawyer, not a particular lawyer, but generally speaking. And you have seen in this show today two excellent lawyers who Vicki and Elle, I'm referring to, not myself, to Vicki and Elle, and you can see their attitude and their approach. And when you're looking to hire a lawyer, if you are doing so, you want to have people who have that kind of understanding, and people should be asking questions about how you deal with different issues. And that'll be another conversation. But I want to really thank Vicki and Elle. Vicki I've known for years, Elle I've just met. Two wonderful people, very fine lawyers. And thank you again for sharing D-Day with me today. This has been Bobby O, Bobo Potsner. Thank you very much. See you next time.